SS+K, we're asked to establish the mission, clarify the mission of the foundation in its identity. And if you think about cancer and the challenge it poses outside of the actual disease, the challenge it poses in terms of connecting and galvanizing a movement behind it is, even though everyone has a story about it, you don't know who has a story. So the first rule of marketing in a social world, which is provoke, is tapping into people's passions. What we realized in research was that since cancer has become more and more of a chronic disease that can be managed, people have a different attitude about it these days, and that they're much more willing to fight. So instead of paternalistic imagery and sort of talking down to people, try to provoke people with a sense of you can beat this. You know, this is much more of aggressive fighter mentality. Connect is the next rule of social marketing in a social world. And there it's about, when you have tapped into something, fuel the debate. Create venues for people to talk about it. Be seen as fueling the relevance of the conversation and contributing to that conversation, wherever that may go. The foundation did that in any number of ways, not the least of which is providing, essentially a wristband to signal that you had a story and that you wanted to talk about it. But also online, in creating forums for people to share their stories. The third rule is share. It's essentially allow people, empower people to become your best media and really reward them for sharing their own stories. And that's exactly what the foundation did, which was go out and, after they've created so many of these conversations in the ether, not online, pull them back and ask people to actually share their stories online in a more formal way. And then finally, the last rule is to own, is to allow people to own it. And that's sometimes the hardest thing for brands to do, which is to give essentially the ownership of the success and of the experience, to give up some of that to people and allow them to create for themselves what it's all about. And I think for sure that's what happened with the Obama campaign, when young people really felt like they played a big role in electing a president. And there's no question it happened in the Livestrong campaign, where you still see yellow wristbands. People became part and participants in this movement. And again, I'd argue that the yellow wristband in an age well before social media and Facebook and Twitter was the most successful social media campaign in history because of those conversations, because people felt they'd owned it. If we were to do it today, which would be, to have a second crack at it, you could think of any number of ways that you would really fuel the Livestrong wristband. The fact that it was fueled offline is amazing. Could you imagine what we could do online? You could have put different ID numbers, unique ID numbers on every wristband, and ask people to register them, and really turn that into a social media effort and a digital effort to complement the offline sharing of stories. You wouldn't have been able to pull millions and millions and millions of stories online as well, but it worked pretty well regardless.